Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this week for another installment of Ask Epic. We are meeting every week to discuss all things Epic, and we want to provide new to Epic families and returning families a place to learn all about the opportunities that we offer. I'm Sarah Nunley, and I'm from the Epic Development Team.
Hey there, and I'm Ashley Brown, and I'm also from the Epic Development Team. So we're excited to be here today. We're going to talk a little bit about dyslexia and dysgraphia and how Epic works with students that are struggling with that. And so we're excited to learn more. Those of you that are joining us, we would love to hear from you. So if you have questions, comments, anything like that, we encourage you to put them in the chat. We will address everything as we see it. And if you have anything that maybe isn't is a little bit off topic from what we're doing today, or maybe just needs a little bit more one-on-one help, I'm going to drop Sarah and I's team phone number and email in the chat, and you please email us or give us a call. Someone from our team would love to help you. Maybe that's answer questions about Epic, or maybe we'll direct you where you've got to go. Maybe it's to our RTI team if it's something regarding today's topic. So I'm going to put that little phone number and email address in the chat right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. We are joined today by Sarah Childers, and Sarah is an RTI literacy specialist. Our RTI literacy specialist, our team, is responsible for providing our struggling readers and their teachers with the support needed to ensure our students get the best possible educational outcome. We are lucky to get to learn more from Sarah today about how EPIC helps these students and what parents can do to assist their students at home.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. We have two Sarahs today. So thank you, Sarah Childers, for joining us today. We're really happy to have you. So just to kind of kick us off, could you tell us let's start with dyslexia. Maybe tell us for people that aren't familiar what it is, and maybe just approximately how many people are affected by that.
Sure, I'd love to. I'll give you the actual terminology that we use. It's really a lot of words, but I like to use it just because it's what's nationally recognized. So the International Dyslexia Association defines dyslexia as a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin, and it is characterized by difficulties with accurate or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties can result from a deficit in phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. And as far as the number of students that have dyslexia, what we have according to the National Center for Learning Disabilities and the International Dyslexia Association is as many as 1 in 5 or 20% of the student population has dyslexia or dyslexic characteristics.
Yeah, that's a lot. 1 in 5. I mean, that's was a little bit surprising to me to hear, Sarah. Okay, so let's say what would you say are some common characteristics of children or students that have dyslexia?
Well, I love a resource that's been provided by our Oklahoma's Dyslexia and Dysgraphia Handbook, and it provides a really great chart of some characteristics of dyslexia and what it may look like based on their age and grade. So I would love for everyone to have the opportunity to review that for just a second. And some of these things are not even age-based. So if you've noticed this is something maybe the student previously struggled with, but they've kind of compensated or learned to adapt to that and are now proficient in that, that's still something valuable for our department to know, as well as the teacher, so that we know how your student may be coping for difficulties that they've experienced in the past.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's a great document.
Yeah. And I think it would probably be helpful if I shared that in the chat for people to look at later on. So I'll do that right now, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. And then so talk to us now about dysgraphia. Something that I think maybe is a common belief is that every student with dyslexia is going to have dysgraphia. So can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so let me define dysgraphia first. That's kind of the first point of that conversation to kind of tap into. And it is actually defined as a specific learning disability that affects how easily children can acquire written language and then how well they use their written language to express their thoughts. And so we estimate roughly that around 5% of the population has dysgraphia, and about 30 to 40% of students with dyslexia have that co-occurrence there. So a much smaller population, but still something that we want to be aware of and be looking for any characteristics that may be present so we can troubleshoot that with the teacher and the family.
Awesome. Okay. And then, so again, same thing, some common signs or characteristics. I know you've shared a chart with me about that as well. So I'm going to share my screen for that
Yes,
really
absolutely.
quickly.
I'm just a very tactile and graph oriented person. We like a lot of things that parents and teachers can go back and reference because dyslexic and dysgraphic students are very much like a fingerprint, and we want everyone to be able to see lots of different characteristics because your student may have multiple of these or maybe just a few. And so that just kind of helps us figure out exactly how to give a really unique treatment plan for your student.
So these right here, so we've got is that correct? All these right here, these are the dysgraphia characteristics.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, and there's also in these resources that I provided some just kind of bulleted point things just to kind of give you a few things to kind of ground what you're looking for, and when you feel that there's some concern to give you notice of how many of these things your child or student is experiencing to know that you for sure want to reach out to our department.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Let me turn off my screen share here, and I will I'll share that link as well. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Such great information, Sarah. Seriously, I don't think I've ever seen that information before. So I think I want to print it off for myself to have. Can you kind of describe to us how your department works with teachers and families of our students with dyslexia or dysgraphia?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite topics to discuss and something that our entire team is passionate about and can talk your ear off for days. Our department works to consult, train, and empower the teachers to support their struggling readers from grades pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. And I'm proud to say that in addition to helping teachers with formally identified dyslexic and dysgraphic students, we support their ability to intervene with any struggling student, regardless of their age, grade, identification, or ability level. And we want all of our educators to better understand structured literacy and science of reading-based best practices, including identifying our at-risk students, then also what their reading, writing, and spelling difficulties may look like, conducting our own diagnostic assessments, creating targeted intervention plans, helping create SMART goals, providing those appropriate accommodations, aligning resources to target our skill deficits, and using data to drive instruction, and also how to implement that explicit and systematic structured literacy that also includes progress monitoring. I want to really stress, I know it's one of the things that as teachers, they're oftentimes, oh, there's so much on our plate, and we understand that. I've been a teacher and I know that feeling, but we want to stress that progress monitoring is so vital to this process for our dysgraphic and dyslexic students and our at-risk students. It's critical to understand that whether the plans are implemented and working effectively, to make sure that the student is making that adequate growth and progress. And if not, it helps to drive our decisions about modifying or intensifying our support.
Wow, I love that. Your department does, seriously, does so much. That's amazing. How does your team work with other departments within EPIC to assist our students?
We love collaboration. It's one of the things that really drives our team in growing and learning from everyone. We recognize that when we communicate effectively and we collaborate really intentionally, and we harness the strengths and resources and all the departments that we can touch and reach, that innovation really occurs in that time, and it creates a really customized learning experience tailored to fit each student's unique needs. So one of the projects that we've collaborated on and we're super proud of is our Fly with Phonics website, which is an explicit and systematic phonics program utilizing the University of Florida Literacy Institute's UFly Foundations program. It's a site that can be accessed at no cost by any EPIC student or educator year-round using their EPIC email address. And so I've provided the link there for you guys to have a little tour of it, and I will be happy for Team Wood to set up a training for you guys to help you make sure that you're really sure about how to use it to the fullest of its abilities. This site features over 1,000 instructional videos, numerous aligned activities, games, decodable text aligned for each and every lesson. We've developed diagnostic assessments to help identify where in the program your student should start. And it helps to provide those reminders for that vital progress monitoring, including the PDFs and quick and easy access to use it. We've also collaborated with Epic Ed to help infuse that Tier 1 instruction for grades K through 2. But the site is a great tool for supporting our struggling readers at any grade level. If an educator or family is interested in using the site and wants to know more, we are happy to provide additional training and support. In fact, we've trained around 200 teachers this year so far. So it's something we're really passionate about and would love to let everyone that's interested in knowing more support them in those efforts.
Wow, that is amazing. Is that something we can drop in the chat as well?
I did. I put that link to that website in the chat, the Fly with
Wonderful.
Phonics. Yes.
That is awesome. That's great information for our families. Thank you. So Sarah, do you believe that early intervention is important for our families and these students?
I don't believe it's important. I believe it's 100% vital to student success. We have a great quote in our Oklahoma Dyslexia and Dysgraphia handbook that really helps identify the importance of it. It says that the best solution to the problem of reading failure is to allocate our resources for early identification and prevention. And they write about this book called Straight Talk about reading, which says that early identification is critical because the earlier the intervention, the easier it is to remediate. And that our screening measures will identify at-risk students in mid-kindergarten with 85% accuracy. So think about those numbers. And if our intervention is not provided before the age of 8, that the probability that these difficulties in reading will continue is 75%. So it is imperative that as we're getting this data to really show who's struggling to learn to read, that we are pulling all levers to effectively support that student.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. This was actually my next question to ask you, Sarah. And then somebody that was viewing, one of our participants, asked the same exact question. So Stacy wants to know, can parents reach out to your department on their own if they suspect one of their students may have dyslexia or dysgraphia, or does that need to go through their teacher?
What we highly suggest is to have a really open line of communication with the teacher. And the reason that I say that is because what we want to do is for that to open up a dialogue with the teacher, if you haven't openly discussed it, or even if you have, to let them know that it's an ongoing concern of yours, and then to really encourage them to reach out to our department if they haven't done so. And so that we can align resources to not only empower the parents, but to also empower the teacher and to also help take a little bit of workload off the teacher by knowing that those instructional practices and activities that we are suggesting are backed by someone with a national certification and specialty in literacy. So it really is a great part of that learning team to just help wrap everyone in together to make sure we're all working on those goals collectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as teachers, we all know we'd work together so much better, right? Like, let's all work as a team. We can do so much more good for our students when we do that. So thank you. Okay, so next, do you guys, and I think you've pretty much already addressed this, but I just want to clarify because I think it's something that maybe parents don't realize, but can you guys only help students with dysgraphia and dyslexia, or are you open to helping all of our readers?
This is one of my favorite answers. No, we don't just support any dyslexic or dysgraphic students. We actually support any educator who wants to better understand structured literacy and science of reading best practices so that they can support not only those dyslexic and dysgraphic students, but all of their students.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really exciting to hear. So just any of your, if you have students or if you're a parent, if you have children that are struggling with reading, these strategies are good for all of our learners, not just students with a diagnosis. So I'm really glad to be able to share that. Okay, so next, being at Epic, we do things a little differently. And so it's not saying, in my mind, a lot of things we do are better than what happens in brick and mortar, but I have to ask, do students receive the same level of support at Epic that they would receive in their brick and mortar setting?
Yes, and Ashley, you actually kind of took some of what I was going to say, that actually in some ways Epic is way better. We can actually customize their instructional plans and meetings around the needs of individual students, which isn't always the case for brick and mortar students. Sometimes they're having to be aligned by schedules and they're missing out on sometimes recess or some of the funner activities, science experiments, or just different activities. And so the great thing is with Epic, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. You get that personalized instruction that's tailored around your schedule and really help support your students' individual needs.
Awesome. I had a feeling that's how it was, but it's always fun to get to share it, in a public setting. It looks like we have another question. They said, I have a child with suspected dyscalculia. Is this the right office? It has been addressed with the teacher and we are getting support, but it's not enough. Is that something that your department would handle?
So I'm really excited that we have some up and coming plans for kind of a sister department that will be supporting that initiative really effectively coming next year. And so the department that you could reach out to would be the RTI department and ask for support in math. And that will help align to some of those that are already in EPIC that can help with some of those resources. And if unsure how to get in touch with them, you can definitely reach out to our department and I can help make that connection for you and share any resources that they've allowed us to kind of co-treat together for those students that struggle in all three areas for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys, for asking these questions. I always love getting to hear them and getting to ask them to the person who's kind of the expert. So this is great. Keep them coming. Okay, so to kind of follow up on that question I had just asked you about how support looks different at EPIC, to really kind of go even further, how can the support that students receive look different based upon their learning models? As you know, at EPIC, we have several different learning models students can choose from, and they're all vastly different. So how does their support change based upon that?
Well, the great news is that it does look a little bit different in each scenario. And so that's one of the things that our team really prides ourselves in is asking what that structure looks like for that particular teacher and team situation so we can take all things into account. But the method of delivery could look different based on the learning model chosen, as we talked about. For example, our one-to-one teacher, the teacher may meet with the student in person or over Zoom. In Common Academy, the same thing might happen, or they could also have like a co-op environment where the team teaching's happening, and then compared to the VLC where the students would be mostly seen in person. It is important to realize that the intervention plans can be tailored to the student's needs regardless of which learning model that they've selected, and that's what's most important and another reason that we believe EPIC is extra special and the right choice for students that need that tailored instruction.
Thank you, Sarah. I love those answers. What should parents look for when they have struggling readers? Like they've noticed that their student is struggling a bit. Would you also recommend erring on the side of caution? Like maybe as a parent, maybe you're kind of noticing your students is struggling a little bit and you want to make sure they're getting appropriate help versus, maybe they just haven't caught up yet. So what would you recommend with that?
Absolutely. The first thing that should kind of start getting some bells and alarms going off for you as a parent is if the child is in avoidance or frustration when dealing with reading and writing tasks. So if they're okay when they're doing science and you're hands-on doing experiments and other things like that. However, when they're sitting down to write anything or they're spelling and they're getting frustrated and needing to take that brain break because it's just too much, that's the time where you want to reach out to your teacher and let them know what types of behavioral things are triggering the student and at what point in their daily lessons that's occurring. That's just kind of our first inclination that something is wrong and that we want to support them in learning how to cope with that and then provide supports for that student. And it can vary by age. So we will have some ideas that will help you in how to just do more at home to reassure them. One of the things I really love to do with my dyslexic son was providing charts that will kind of help him structure his day visually so that he knows how many tasks we're asking for or when he's going to get his next break by setting maybe a timer. So they know that it's not this long process, but instead kind of chunking it up to give them that little feeling of relief.
Oh, that is great. That's really great information for parents. And especially you start off with your younger kids, you're not always sure what is normal, what is age appropriate. So that is some really great information for our parents to be watching for their students, any issues that could arise. How can parents help their children with reading at home?
Well, my first answer would be to have that conversation with the teacher, to just make sure that you're aligning your practice at home to align with what the student strategies and goals are by their teacher set forth. If they're using a digital supplement, there are oftentimes aligned practice activities that can reinforce targeted skills, and the teacher can easily print that stuff off or email it to you so that you can print it off with your printer at home. And so that's just a great thing to use. And keep note of any of those struggles daily to help discuss with your teacher and drive that open conversation forward, and to figure out where the breakdown's occurring, and also to know when the things that used to frustrate them are now not a struggle and they're finding that success, so that we can celebrate even the smallest of victories to help keep them going in the right direction. There are some resources that I'm going to share with Ashley to promote for you guys to take a look at. And there's the OSDE's Early Screening for Reading Difficulties Guide. And the pages 25 through 34 are the ones that I really like to look at, that have a lot of activities and strategies for families to support all the 5 pillars of literacy, from phonological awareness to phonics and spelling, fluency, vocabulary, and even comprehension. And there's even specific plans on there. So when you go to that website, there are some really tailored PDFs you can pull up that give you a lot of ideas of how you can support your student. One of the other things that you can also do, and I've kind of mentioned it a little bit before, but having that roster teacher network with our department for additional ideas that sometimes they don't really always think of, that are kind of out of the box. When you think of dyslexia, you think of it just as reading, or dysgraphia, just writing. But as I said, the visual graphic organizers and visual aids that help set up those daily routines, and they help establish like a designated area for, our learning environment is here, and we're always going to go get our school supplies in this little cubby. Just taking any of the guesswork out of where students need to go to find their curriculums and their resources and track their day. It just helps to reduce that mental fatigue, which is vital for them, because they're working extremely hard to compensate for their areas that they're struggling with. And so that's something great. Reading aloud is a great opportunity for that, just kind of family bonding time, finding stories that you remembered reading as a child that you wish to share. When you practice your fluency, bringing those characters alive with all of your vivid voices and your expression helps model what reading should be like and how enjoyable it should be, and really engage them in the storyline so that they can discuss it with you after. So it works on their listening comprehension. And 2, it helps to grow that background knowledge. So when you're talking about words and experiences, they have, something to really concrete into and really reference when they're having those group discussions with their teacher. Looking at the art and things like that sometimes will help get them interested in other areas. Maybe that character in the story was a scientist and now they want to go do a science experiment, or it was an illustrator and they want to draw these really elaborate pictures and create their own storybook. So really leaning into their areas of interest, and then growing with, new topics that they'll find new and different, to grow that vocabulary and experience and exposure.
Hey, Sarah, well, both of you, Sarahs, I just wanted to real quick, I see some questions in the chat. So if you don't mind, I'm going to
Yeah.
throw these ones at you while we have you. Jessica says, my son reads okay. However, he has an issue with comprehending and being able to recall information at a later time for work or testing. Can your department help with this type of issue?
Yes, we provide strategies with all types of literacy. And so we have graphic organizers that can help them to interact with the text in the most highly effective way possible, and then chart their parts of the story to recall. We've done things like book walks where they use the pictures or puppets even. We've got some kids that like to draw, and they'll, kind of act it out and different things like that. So definitely, depending on the age of the student, we could definitely help align some resources to support comprehension. Absolutely.
Awesome. I love to hear it. Okay, another question from Chandra wants to know, will Lexia work all summer?
Unfortunately, I don't believe Lexia will be available during the summer, and I believe that's so they can do the reset of all the information and align the new teachers and principal and MDI teams appropriately to have it ready to rock and roll for the next school year. And that is one of the vital reasons why we love our Fly with Phonics website that we've posted in the chat. Is it is available 365 days out of the year at no additional cost. And so if you need support aligning what your student's working in Lexia so that they can use Fly with Phonics to help bridge that time where it's unavailable, our department would be happy to assist your teacher in doing so.
Yeah, I love that. I know parents always worry like, oh, my child loves this program. And it is kind of hard when they have to give it up for summer. But one thing I could say is almost every department I've ever worked with, you guys are amazing at finding something else that we can use in place of it. And so don't ever feel like if you're worried that you're going to lose a program over the summer, reach out, whether it's to your teacher or somebody like you, and say, what can I do here? Because we almost always have something up our sleeves that we can share. So I love that. Okay, the final question I have for right now, and I'll let Sarah Nunley get back to her questions. Stacey wants to know who will determine that the student officially has dyslexia or dysgraphia so that they can receive proper instruction tailored to them. Is this done through testing with the school psychologist, or is this step necessary?
So that question is a little bit of a caveat there. We've got our resources that are available to all students. So the diagnosis of dyslexia or dysgraphia is not, something that we have to have in order for us to help support and intervene. It would take a formal evaluation for a student to see if they qualify for special education services through formal testing. And so if that's something that you're concerned about, I would definitely advocate to go to the teacher and discuss if there's data there and if they've tried a lot of interventions and things that are not seeming to work, then we'll look at that data and then they would potentially have a meeting to discuss if there's reason to do a formal evaluation there, which could identify the need for special education services.
Awesome. And that's done through the school psychologist, correct? We can do that.
Yes, and so
Okay.
what they would do is have the conversation with the teacher, and then the teacher will loop in the principal to let them know, and then we'll see if we've already been supporting them. And if not, then in the balance of all that process, we kind of sweep in, try to support until they make a determination. And the great thing about our department is any of those strategies that we use, they're aligned by science of reading based practices, which are, aligned for dyslexic and dysgraphic students. So our plans change very little. It would just be maybe accommodations in workload and testing environments and things like that. But that's the really great thing about having our department as part of the learning team for that student is you kind of get that really intensive plan even without that formal diagnosis. Although it is very important for many students to go through that process to have, adequate goals and accommodations for daily classwork and things like that. So I don't want to say we take the place of that. It's just a more formal process that they'll need to loop the teacher and principal in. And there's some paperwork that kind of gets that process started if that's what's determined is needed by the family and teacher.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for your questions. And Sarah, I'm going to turn it back to you so you can finish your questions.
Okay, Sarah, so where should parents go should they still have some concerns about their child's reading?
Well, I love the advice given through our Oklahoma Dyslexia and Dysgraphia Handbook, and that's that our positive partnerships between the parents or caregivers and the teachers are critical in ensuring that our progress is going forward towards our learning goals for that student. If you think your student has dyslexia, dysgraphia, or any other academic struggles, you definitely want to talk to your child's teacher. The information from our universal and dyslexia screeners, and for our older students, we look at our report cards and other benchmark reading scores, and then observation notes from the teacher or the parents, and begin to have conversations to let our staff and teachers, our department know that the student's progress is happening, not happening at all, happening at a slower pace, or we're just now having a new concern. And so it just kind of opens up that dialogue for us to start really tracking data, providing recommendations to start supporting that student, and then monitoring if it's working effectively. And so that's my biggest thing is go back to the teacher if you've had the conversation and you've tried recommendations and say, we're doing all the things you've asked us to do. I still don't feel like we're getting anywhere. Can you go over the data with me to see, are we on an upward trend? Are we not having growth? And what more can I do to help support you in your efforts? And then they'll be more than happy to have that conversation with you and then loop in our team for added, supports if need be.
Oh, that's awesome. You have such great information. I have a feeling our families and caregivers are just like listening so intently. You touched on this previously a little bit, but parents or caregivers are sitting here and they're watching this and where do we start? Because I think a lot of times it's very overwhelming as a parent. Where do you start exactly? Maybe you pick up on those nuances with your children and you just don't even know where to begin. So can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yes, the first thing I would say is to go back to these documents we've shared that have the list of characteristics and concerns that are common amongst students that struggle with dyslexia and dysgraphia characteristics. If you're seeing many of these struggles and if you feel like you're not sure what to do and you're doing all of the things that you know, I love the saying, when you know better, you do better. And so one of the things that we suggest is having that conversation every time you feel like you've hit the wall with the teacher. And that way the teacher can reassure you either we're on a path and we've got this data that's showing this growth, or, oh, you know what, we've given it some time and we're not seeing that. Let me reach back out to the RTI literacy team and see what other supports they can do. We provide additional training as needed, and we will walk alongside the teacher in order to support that student. So just keeping that really open line of communication, and then again, documenting at home what struggles you're seeing so that the teacher's aware, because sometimes it's day and night different. We don't want to think of it that way, but sometimes the teacher goes, they work so great for me and they listen and do all the things that I asked them to do. But then the parent says, well, they shut down by the time they get home to me and I'm really struggling to get anything done. And so both views are valuable in our information as we try to figure out what's triggering the student and how to support. So there's no detail too small to take note of and alert your teacher to, so that we can make sure we're giving your student all that they can have to succeed.
That's wonderful to hear. I love to hear how you're really you guys are looking for, and we say this a lot at Epic, but that whole child approach. We're not trying to look at this on a one-track mind. We're trying to address the entire child there. So I think that's great. I just shared in the chat a quick reference list. I think, Sarah, you had mentioned this just a minute ago, and it has about every resource you could ever want. If you have questions, this is your one-stop shop. I am telling you what. And if you are worried, like I know earlier we had somebody that they said they were on their phone, so they were going to have a hard time getting that link, and you want me to email this to you, drop me your email in the chat and I will write your name down, and I will certainly do that if you're not able to share this link or save this link right now. But okay, I have a few more questions for you, Sarah. Can you tell us about some student outcomes after they receive support? So we talked about how early intervention is vital, right? You said that it's key to getting these students where they want to be. So let's say we've done that, but what are some of the student outcomes that we can look for after these students receive the support they need for their reading struggles?
Well, the first thing I want to let parents know, and as a parent of a dyslexic child that I had to have told to me and really take it to heart, is that with reading remediation, that we're in a marathon and not a sprint. And so I want everyone to just realize that it's going to take some time to find the appropriate areas of focus, and then find the supports that speak to the child, and find that really good sweet spot of, how often we're meeting and how long we're meeting for before they kind of hit that exhaustion point. And so it takes a little bit of, working all of that out. And so I want everyone to have a little bit of grace in working to find that sweet spot for that student, and just know that it's not going to happen overnight. The time frames and growth vary student to student. So for me to give, just a really broad, it's going to take 6 weeks to fix this, that's not the case. And I would never want to mislead anyone. So just know that documentation of, figuring out what's working and what's not, those open lines of communication, we're going to move that in the right direction. And that's the best thing that you can do. It's just to remember that it's not going to be an overnight quick fix. It's just making that conscious decision to work on those things every day and communicating with the teacher often, providing as many repetitions and exposure to the things both at home and during instructional time as possible, just to help really make that second nature for the student to access that information quick and automatically.
Awesome. Okay, and then I know that you've mentioned that you yourself are a parent of a student with dyslexia, and I know also you've said that almost everyone in your department has been impacted by that in some way. So could you tell us more about your team's experience with that and kind of how that's all worked out?
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why we here in this department all came together. It was part of our story that gave us that light to go learn more about literacy and how to really support those struggling readers. Collectively, as you said, our entire team has a direct relationship to dyslexia, either personally or an immediate family member. Each of our journeys look a little bit different, but we all agree that our struggling readers can become proficient readers and have bright futures ahead of them. I would love to challenge everyone today that is, concerned about their child struggling to research some names of famous dyslexics. That includes Albert Einstein, Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, Tom Holland, Tim Tebow, Jennifer Aniston, Henry Winkler. The list goes on and on. And it just helps us to prove that there's a world of opportunities that await dyslexic and dysgraphic students, and that they have many special talents and abilities that we often refer to in our department as their dyslexic superpowers.
I love that. I love that you guys have that take on it and how important it is that not only these students and teachers and families that you're helping, you guys have that direct personal experience. So I always like there's just nobody better that could be helping out in this. So I think that's really exciting to hear. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today and also your entire team. I know you guys have a whole team of people that are working to ensure that our students receive the support they need. I know specifically we talked today about dyslexia and dysgraphia, but like you said before, it's really about helping our struggling readers. That's what matters. And you guys, I know, are working tirelessly each year to improve upon things. You've kind of talked about that. I love that. These responsibilities showcase the respect and devotion that you guys possess for our EPIC families and students. And your contributions are pivotal for EPIC as you guys are making sure that our students and families are ready for the present and their future. And you guys really are making such a huge impact on our families, and we're so grateful for you.
Well, I appreciate you guys for having me today. We love talking about all of the ways that you can help support the struggling readers and writers. And again, we are open to supporting any teachers or family members. So have that conversation and reach out. We'd love to help.
I love that. Sarah, thank you so, so much. And you provided so much information today. And I have a feeling your department is going to get a lot of emails and phone calls from parents which is fantastic. That means that these parents are concerned about their children's reading ability. So I love that. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely.
If you still have any questions about our programs or anything that we discussed today, or maybe you are considering enrolling, maybe need some more information, our information is in the chat. Feel free to reach out to us at edt@epiccharterschools.org, or our number is 405-400-0651. And we are happy to answer any questions or give you the information you need. So thank you again for joining us today, and please come back next week for another Ask Epic.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.